Hi, my name is Sam from Calves Performance Garage, and this is Shed Sesh. Shed Sesh is a series that I'm going to record where I document all the different tasks that don't deserve a video in themselves and give a bit of an explanation and point out any things that I deem important. On this episode, I'm going to be finishing off some of the engine bay wiring, working on and installing the cowl, painting some parts, finishing some interior stuff, and also finishing up the rear end. So welcome to Shed Sesh episode 1. So with all the wiring in the engine bay already, I'm just routing all the wiring and putting it all into the fuse box. I must say it is quite difficult to get all the wiring back into the fuse box, so I definitely recommend when you take it out, you take a lot of extensive photos. With the ground next to the fuse box, I'm using a right angle die grinder with a red abrasive pad to get all the paint off for a good ground connection. I'm also using a M6 by 1.25 tap just to get all the paint out of the threads to ensure a good connection. I've done this same process for the rest of the grounds in the engine bay just to ensure I have the best connection possible, and when I plug everything in, I know that my ground should be 100%. I painted the cowl earlier, but I had to remove this rubber strip to ensure that I can paint the whole thing to get a smooth paint job. To get it off, I used a heat gun and slowly pried it back. As I had two cowls, I had the choice between two rubber strips, and I ended up picking the one that was on the shell originally. To make sure that there's a good connection between the adhesive and the cowl, I gave the rubber strip a very good clean. So I removed these end pieces off the cowl as I bought brand new ones. There was a little bit of overspray from when the car was re-sprayed by its original owner, but these new end pieces were pretty cheap, so I just decided to replace them. If you were to buy a new rubber strip, it comes with adhesive on the back already, but unfortunately I couldn't get access to a brand new strip and it was actually pretty pricey. I decided to just use some 2-part epoxy. I first lined up one end and stuck down the rubber piece onto the cowl to that one end. As it was stuck there, I knew that the other end would meet up, so I slowly started applying epoxy in sections to just glue the rubber strip onto the cowl. The final result was alright, but in some sections I used too much epoxy and it bled through onto the top. I'm not too concerned, as I hope that eventually it will kind of wash off and just look a bit more natural, but at the moment it's a little shiny, but for a quick little fix it looks better than it did before. As I've been giving the engine bay a good cleanup, I've spent the extra time to give a few brackets a good new paint job. So I painted a few brackets. The brackets that I painted was one that holds one of the AC hoses, and the other brackets are the brackets that hold the fuel lines along with the power and ground that goes to the starter motor. I used my blasting cabinet that has currently got glass bead medium in it, and as you can see, it cleaned it up quite well. To some of the dirty bolts, I used my wire wheel that is on my bench grinder just to clean up the face of the bolts to get them looking nice and shiny again. To paint these brackets, I just used some engine enamel. I didn't really do that good of a job or take some due care, but to just get them to cure faster, I put them in front of a little heater. I attached this big metal support that goes into the interior just to hold up the steering wheel and also the steering column. As with the steering column dangling around, it was actually damaging the firewall quite a bit and it was hard to get the gasket back into place. But eventually the gasket is now in and it should hopefully hold. One thing that I was very surprised was that the ABS sensor on the NA and the turbo are different. I could have easily adapted the connectors, but I just decided to swap them over as it's just 4 bolts. With the car up a bit higher, I then started to put the rear drive shaft in. I couldn't put the rear drive shaft in originally as I do have some rear subframe lock bolts, but unfortunately on one side the lock bolt was not going in smoothly. So I then got a M12 by 1.25 tap and just re-tapped the threads. After cleaning the threads, the bolt went in a lot more smoothly, so I'm a lot happier with it. To put the rear drive shaft in, I just undid the big 19mm bolt that holds the hub and the two rear control arms onto it. A quick tip with getting this bolt out is once you've actually taken the nut off, hit the end that the nut came off so it protrudes a little bit from the other side. Then get the open end of your spanner and place that in the gap created at the bolt head end, and then as you're using your impact driver and you keep loosening it, just pull the spanner towards the side that you're loosening and then it will come out a lot easier. And as the drive shaft has been sitting on the ground for quite a while, I just gave the ends of the drive shaft a good clean with some brake cleaner, a wire brush and a bit of Scotch-Brite. I only did this to the end of the shaft that goes into the hub, as you don't want to do it to the other end as it may score it and it could cause damage. It is smooth for a reason. I don't know the reason, but I'm going to keep it how it is. To ensure that the hub doesn't seize to the shaft, I like to just spray some lithium grease on the inside of the hub and also onto the end of the shaft. Also give the inside of the hub a good little clean, and this little bit of time spent will save a lot of time in the future if I do run into issues. I was pretty lucky getting the rear drive shaft in, as they can be a bit annoying to get into the diff, but luckily it slid straight in. Once I pulled the hub away from the body, I could easily slide it into the hub and then just put the nut on that connects to the drive shaft to keep it all in place. And that's it for Shed Sesh episode 1. I hope you enjoyed it. I do have some more footage recorded in a different way, so I hope for these first 2 episodes, this voiceover with a little bit of explanation will be helpful to some people. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing and liking, and I will be putting out more content in the future. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.